Okay, it is the last Friday of the month, and we're going to do my favorite feather, which is the formal feather, or the hump and bump feather. And I love this feather. Now, what's different between this feather and all the feathers that we've discussed so far? This feather, to create a feather unit, it's actually two feathers. So where the long arm feather, one feather. The flower feather, one feather. The hook feather, one feather, right? And the, what was the other one we did? The ribbon feather, one feather, okay? With the hump and bump feather, you will always start with a partial feather, okay? So if this was our spine, you're going to start with a partial feather. You're going to bounce back here and go down. That's your feather unit, okay? Why do we do that partial feather, you ask? Because when we come and we're doing a border and we need to meet up, it's much easier to get that angle that you want, okay? If you started with that type of feather, okay, which is more of the long arm feather, and you're coming up and around, boop, you get that funny feather right there, okay? So that's why we do that partial feather, okay? So we're going to feather this, and I think all my videos I went this way, so we'll go this way. See if I can do it. Remember, I told you to let your hand glide over the paper. It's very important. And we're cutting that area in half when we come create that next feather. Cutting the area in half. That's going to help you get that 60-degree angle that you want. One of the reasons I like these feathers so much is just that. I can mold them to any shape that I like, where I struggle with the other feathers to do that. Okay. Come down and do this side. Now, I don't want you to panic if you do this and you get off track a little bit, okay? It's the muscle memory that you're looking for, and to be honest, if that happened in a quilt, I quilt everything so heavily, I know that I'm just going to come back in and I'm going to stipple on over that, okay? Boom, mistake finished. It was like my little eraser, all right? So as we continue, if you know you're going to fill, you can also just travel to your next spot with your stipple. Okay, like that. And you're going to travel to your next spot with the stipple. And then you'd come back and obviously stipple everything. But when you practice, you should really practice getting that back track, okay? I know you guys can do it, okay? So here we are with our curly Q here, and I love this shape. And we're going to start with our half feather and fill up this. And again, everybody's feathers are going to look different, and that's okay. You don't want your feathers to look like mine. You want them to look like yours. Okay, so again, we're just going for the muscle memory. I can't tell you enough how important it is to draw. You know, so when you're on the phone, in a meeting, I'm sure your boss would love that. Just doodle. Okay. Now here I like my feathers to fall behind. Okay, so I come up, trace back, so that they look like they fell behind those feathers. Okay. And here where my feathers are going to get a little lazy, and they're going to lay along the spine a little longer than on the outside. There we go. Okay. So I typically on wreaths go clockwise, but that's what works for me. If you want to go counterclockwise, you can do that. Just make sure you're consistent. Okay. So we've got our first one. We're bouncing back. Now let's say you wanted to fill the entire square. You would just pull your feathers out further into the square to create a square wreath instead of a round one. I do quilt better than I draw. Not necessarily on the domestic though. Those are going to be fun and interesting. Okay, so I've got this space left, so I'm going to put in one larger feather there. Okay? And then we're going to do our inside, our lazy feather there, lays along the spine a little bit longer. Doesn't want to get up out of bed. Lazy, lazy, lazy. There we go. Okay, and it's the same thing. We're cutting that area in half. So as I come back down, I'm cutting that in half. Coming out, and I'm cutting that in half. Okay, and there we go. Okay. Now, typically on straightaways, I'll bounce back and forth from side to side. So I'll do 2 here, come over here and do 2, 2, 2. Okay, that is the formal feather, aka the hump and bump. Okay, now we're going to go on over and stitch that. And that is your last feather. I hope you guys enjoyed your feathers in February. Okay, so our final feather is our formal feather, the hump and bump. So let's see how we do with this one. So we'll do our partial feather first. Maybe even on the domestic, the formal feather's my feather. Oh, let's see how I do going around a corner. That's going to be interesting. All right. Let's try my hand with the wreath over here. Got string everywhere. There's the wreath. Not too bad. We'll come down and do the last one. Feather. This is the hump and bump feather, and so we're just going to kind of get started here. Remember, we start out with our partial feather. Backtrack. Okay, there we go. Now we're going to move on over to our curly Q. Going to do the outside first. We'll actually stitch this one. Instead of going down and creating an echoed spine, I'm going to go ahead okay, so again, notice on the interior curve, okay, the feathers get a little lazy and they tend to lay close to the spine for a little bit longer period of time. Okay, move on over to our wreath. Okay, so we're going to start at 9 o'clock. This is where that partial feather comes into play a little bit more. We do our partial. Okay, so you see the space I have left here. I'm going to put one feather in there, make sure that it fills when I come up and down, okay? And you see this? So now I have room for one more feather, so I'm going to come up and meet that. Okay, so you see how I came in and met that partial feather there. Okay. Now we're going to move on over to our straight one. And there is our straight feather.